Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, next Tuesday in Melbourne, the race that stops the nation will be underway at 3 o'clock. Beautiful thoroughbred horses will barrel down the straight, and no doubt at the end of that race, some trainers and owners will be all that much richer, as will some punters. But the question after the 7:30 report went to air on the 17th of October, that is 2 weeks ago today, is what happens to those horses once they've reached the end of their profit-making life for trainers and owners, Madam Speaker. What we know, Madam Speaker, is that in Australia, thousands and thousands of beautiful racing horses, trotters, are sent off to slaughterhouses and abattoirs in New South Wales and Queensland at the very least. And we do know, despite what the Minister for Racing said this morning, that it has been confirmed by the ABC's meticulously thorough investigation that Tasmanian racehorses at least have been identified at the Mirrormist abattoir, which is at Caboolture in Queensland, Madam Speaker. Now, the reason that we ask this question today, Madam Speaker, is that the story went to air 2 weeks ago. Like many Tasmanians, we've been waiting to hear something from the Racing Minister or Tas Racing in response to a very serious and damning allegation, Madam Speaker, and a finding, in fact, made by journalist Caro Meldrum-Hanna that Tasmanian horses are being sent to an abattoir in Queensland, Madam Speaker. There is no explanation for the Minister's silence on this issue. There is no justification for Tas Racing's silence on this issue either, Madam Speaker. We have clear, unequivocal evidence that horses are travelling from Tasmania to slaughterhouses interstate. Now, Madam Speaker, the Minister said this morning that the Office of Racing Integrity is working with Racing Australia on traceability of racehorses that have been retired from the industry. Madam Speaker, that process began 3 years ago. And there is still no real traceability of thoroughbred horses in the racing industry. And what we do know, Madam Speaker, is that under the rules of racing in Tasmania, there is no requirement for any rehoming of former racehorses, and under the national rules, neither is there any requirement whatsoever, Madam Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, so the fact of the matter is neither the Minister nor Tas Racing nor the Office of Racing Integrity can provide any reassurance to Tasmanians that they know what is happening to ex-racehorses in this state, Madam Speaker. Of course, we know that at least some of them, Madam Speaker, are ending up feeding greyhounds because we have, and as we heard in the parliamentary inquiry into the same shocking kinds of cruelty and wastage in the greyhound racing industry, is that beautiful thoroughbred horses are being sent to greyhound trainers and they're feeding greyhounds, as they are, for example, at Anthony Bullock's property in the north of Tasmania. And interestingly, in Tas Racing's annual report this year, Mr Bullock is the leading trainer, Madam Speaker. Now, I want to read to the House some of what the 7:30 report has found. Big business, big government revenue and big prize money requires big breeding within the industry, producing more than 14,000 foals last financial year. And of course, Madam Speaker, the Tasmanian government is complicit in the breeding of animals that are sent off to abattoirs and knackeries for destruction, Madam Speaker. Tasmanian government funds breeding so that horses can be bred up because someone, they want the next black caviar or the next Phar Lap, but if they don't turn out to be a big cash turner for their owner, of course, those animals, like the greyhounds, are discarded, Madam Speaker. Tasmania's government has a breeding bonus scheme on top of the $30 million annual subsidy, public money, that it gives to Tas Racing. And here we have a statement from Sarah Courtenay, former Minister for Racing, from July last year, that says the Hodgman Liberal government recognises that breeding horses is an important primary industry and funding a breeding incentive program will allow it to grow further. Madam Speaker, Deputy Speaker, that is obscene. That's obscene. We have state-sanctioned breeding of animals only to be discarded and to die the most terrifying and awful deaths. As Cara Meldrum Hanna, outstanding journalist, says in her 7:30 report story, each year around 8,500 horses are retired from the track. And the industry says less than 1% of them end up at an abattoir, but as experienced vets are saying, the figures just don't add up. At one abattoir alone in Queensland, and this is the one where they identified Tasmanian horses, around 4,000 racehorses killed at that abattoir in Queensland a year, Madam Speaker. And they had at the abattoir covert cameras recording horses being beaten and abused from the moment they arrived at Merrimist, trampled and trapped, forced to slaughter, trapped in a maze of holding pens, frantic and disorientated, subject to electric shocks, Madam Speaker. Cara Meldrum Hanna says we've detected horses from Victoria, South Australia, the ACT, Queensland, Tasmania, even the Northern Territory, ending up at Merrimist, despite Racing Australia introducing a traceability rule 3 years ago to track all thoroughbreds from birth to retirement. And Madam Speaker, it's very clear that the overbreeding of these animals for profit is a huge, huge part of the problem. The RSPCA has identified that as a significant contributor towards what is being described as wastage, Madam Speaker, just as it was with the greyhound industry, but it is the needless overbreeding and then discarding for slaughter of beautiful animals in the name of sport. And we know it's not a sport, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's an industry. It's an industry that depends on cruelty in order for profits to be turned. And if you don't believe, Madam Speaker, that these animals are being discarded, I recommend to everyone that they watch the 7:30 report.